Welcome to the Whole Story One-on-One with Anwar Newton. I am your host, Rachel Egboro, creator of The Whole Story and host of The Whole Story, and I'm also a storyteller. Before we bring Anwar on, we're going to watch a live screening of his story, Full Circle K, that was recorded in studio earlier this year. And before that, I'm going to read you his bio. Anwar Newton is a Phoenix-based comedian who has been performing in the Valley for 8 years. He produced and hosted Valley favorite comedy shows like Literally the Worst Show Ever and This Week Sucks Tonight, and has opened for notable touring acts such as Hannibal, Buress, and Notaro. Anwar is also the host of Thrilled to Be Here, a podcast weekly where he unravels and shares his appetite for the obscene. So get ready with your questions, get ready to watch Anwar's story, and then we're going to debrief a little bit and talk about his process of developing his story and then his life today. So bear with me as I transition the screen.
You have to have a glass half full view of the world to find being carjacked beneficial for everybody involved. I was working as a security guard at a bar about 7 years ago. I was finishing up my shift, getting paid out for the end of the night, and around 2:15 a.m., I felt like I was hungry. So I was trying to find where I could get something to eat that late at night. And as I was thinking, I realized, oh, there's a Circle K on my way home. That's where I was going to go. So after I got paid out, I got into my car, which is a 1988 Honda Civic Hatchback LX, gunmetal gray, blue seats. And I take the trip down the street to the Circle K. Now, I knew exactly what I wanted to eat. I've been to Circle K's before. As I pulled up, I figured this would be a quick stop. I got out of the car and I decided that I could leave my car on running as I ran into the Circle K to get food my body didn't need or deserve this late at night. So I dashed inside. I went and grabbed several taquitos in one hand, a bag of Haribo gummy bears, and I rushed to the counter and put it down in record time. And I took a look back at my car to make sure it was still there. It was there, it was good. And then I looked around for the cashier and I realized the cashier was all the way in the back of the store by the soda fountain machine. And they were taking their good time to get to the register. They were walking like they just suffered a gunshot wound in their kneecap, hobbling. After several minutes, I finally get my order taken care of by the cashier. And I look back at the car and it's still there. I'm feeling good. I grab my candy, I grab my snacks, and I rush out to my car. And as I get to the driver's side door, I reach down to pull the handle and I look up and I realize that there's a man sitting in my car. And upon further inspection, that man is not me. So this is all wrong. This is off. I give a yank to the driver's side handle. It's locked. And confused, holding Haribo and fried foods, I look and I tapped on the window very politely as if I was disrupting his evening. He finally looks over after I see him rummaging and shifting gears and pulling knobs in my car. And it didn't even faze him. He gave the most apathetic gesture. He just turned to me, looked me up and down, and went. So I stood there just dumbfounded by what was happening to me. And as I stood there trying to process what was going on, the car shifted in reverse. He started to back out, tires screeched. I stood there and I thought, this is my entire life staring in front of my eyes. I'm not a rich man. I've got this part in my name. I've got gummy bears and I've got these taquitos. All I've got, zero in savings, none in checking. And at that moment, I'm thinking to myself, what to do after this? How do I get to work tomorrow? How do I file a police report? What do I do going forward? I no longer have a car, it's gone. And as I'm processing that, I hear the car rev up and then the engine shut off and the car stopped. And then I heard the car start back up again. and I heard the engine rev up, and I heard the car stop and then shut off. And I start to dial 911, and I'm waving to the guy like, I'm calling the police. And then the car revved up, the engine shut off, and then the car stopped. And as I'm about to call the police and dial that last one, the car door opens up, and a young man gets out, and he goes, "Hey, hold up, hold up. Uh, tell tell me how to drive this." And he didn't know how to drive manual transmission. That's what I realized at that point. I had the greatest anti-theft system known to man in my car. And at that moment, I have been working security for a couple of years. The way to diffuse situations is to speak calmly, speak directly, and lock eyes with people. So I stared this kid in the face, looked at him. He looked like he was no older than 17, 18. He had big baggy cargo shorts on. He had a printed T-shirt. He looked like a young Ti, or if that reference misses you, a young Harry Belafonte. Light skinned brother, Caesar haircut, a little disheveled. And I go, "Hey man, what's going on?" You know. He goes, "Hey man, uh, I just need a ride. Can you give me a ride?" And I thought to myself, "Okay, I can give you a ride, man, but we have to make some sort of agreement here. You just tried to steal my car. You got to promise me that nothing crazy is going to happen, but I can give you a lift if you need a lift. Is that cool?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, I just need a ride down the street. Is that cool?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and get in, and we'll take the ride down the street." And when I said this, I was hoping he would get out of the driver's side, go around the car to the passenger side, and not be able to get in as I got in the car and just sped off. I'm gone. All right. It's about 3 a.m. at this point. But he instead got back into the driver's side, climbed over the center console and into the passenger seat. And I was like, "Ugh, okay." And I sat down in my own car, now reclaimed. And as I asked him where he needed to be taken, um, in some weird fight or flight, I actually started teaching him how to drive the car as a way to make conversation. I go, "See, man, you screwed up because you didn't shift. You got to put the clutch in, and you gotta put the clutch in and then shift at the same time." And he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's cool." I'm like, "Okay, so where did you need to go?" And what originally was going to be a 3 block trip, as he needed to go a couple of blocks away from 12th Street and Indian School to 24th Street and Indian School, he instead changed it to 48th Street and Baseline, which, if you're from Phoenix, is way out of the way. And in that moment, not knowing if the kid had a gun or a knife or where he was at mentally, I merged onto the highway and I started driving to 48th Street and Baseline. And as I got onto the highway, I realized this can't get to 48th Street and Baseline. I don't know what's waiting at 48th Street and Baseline, but it's not a good time. I think I'm gonna get robbed. I think I'm gonna get my organs harvested. I don't know what's gonna happen here at 48th Street and Baseline. So when I got onto the highway, I decided first cop car I see, I'm the drunkest driver on the road. They'll pull us over, situational. And as I'm riding down the highway, wouldn't you believe, no cop cars in sight at 3 a.m. in the morning. As I'm sitting in the car, the kid was started shuffling through my belongings. He's going through the glove compartment. He's changing the radio dial stations. And then I realized that he had a, uh, a hospital armband on his wrist from a mental institution. And I started to piece together what was going on, trying to ask questions like, what's going on? What happened tonight? What's the arm, wristband? He's not giving me any real answers. But as I talked more calmly to him, I realized he was just a kid. He was just a kid, no more dangerous than anybody else I've ever come across. As we traveled down the highway, I got off at 40th Street, and by the time we hit Baseline, I realized there was a Circle K there too. And I pulled in and up to a pump, and I decided maybe I'll get him out of the car here. So I tell him, "Hey man, I'm gonna just fill the tank up with some gas. I'm riding on E." I actually had a full tank of gas, but he hadn't been paying attention to it. But I tried to get him to get out of the car, go into the Circle K, get whatever he needed. So I asked him, do you need any water? Do you need anything? He said, no, I'm good. I'm just going to stay here in the car. Okay. So then I get out and I pretend to swipe my car at the pump. And then I go, hey, I got to go inside because my car's not working at the pump. Can I get you a water or something, man? Are you okay? Everything good? And he goes, give me a pack of cigarettes. As if the evening wasn't costing me enough. Now I have to buy cigarettes. I go inside to the Circle K. I go to the back and get a water. And I walk up to the cashier and I look her in the eyes and I say, please call 911. Somebody has carjacked me. And if that person in the car at pump number 3 comes in here, we are not talking to the police. Is that okay? She goes, got it. I walk back and get another water bottle. I come to the register. She has the police dispatch on the line. And I'm giving them the description of what's going on. I'm being carjacked. I'm at a Circle K at 40th Street and Baseline. The dispatch, very disgruntled, is demanding me tell him whether the person has a gun or a knife. I tell them I don't know. That doesn't mean they do. That doesn't mean they do not. I just know that we're here at the Circle K and I need help. And as I got off the phone, I realized over my shoulder the kid was walking in at that point. So I dropped the phone. I go, hey, man, I got the water. You need anything else? And he walks up to the cashier and he says, hey, can I get a pack of cigarettes? And the cashier, knowing the situation, turned to him with furrowed eyebrows, a scowl, and the harshest of tones, says, do you have ID? Looks him up and down. And as he realized he didn't have ID, he patted his pockets down. The police showed up in record time, the fastest police response I've ever seen in my life. It was a matter of minutes. 3 armed officers came in. And in that moment, I realized that we're both Black. I gave the dispatch a description of a Black dude. So I just wanted to make sure they didn't think it was me. So I pointed to him. I was like, it's this dude right here. You want to get him right there. And they grabbed him, put him down on the counter, pat him down, told him to calm down. Even though I was a little worried in that moment, they emptied his pockets out and I realized he had been pocketing all my belongings. He had my registration to my car, CDs, air freshener. And as I let out a sigh of relief, the police officers asked me if everything was okay. Should we go back to the car to check if everything was cool? I knew they were just trying to see if I had drugs or anything too. But after that, they let me go and they had the kid outside at the Circle K on the curb. And I sat in my car, I started back up. Now it is about 3:45 a.m. in the morning. And I backed out of the pump space and I start to drive out. And I look over at the officers who have the kid uncuffed now, standing on the curb as they're surrounding him. I didn't press charges. They didn't have anything on him. And with my window down, as I passed by him, I heard the kid yell out, hey, man, thank you for helping me. And then I turned on the 40th Street and got back on the highway. And I thought to myself, did I help him? I hope I did.
Yo, all right. I'm gonna bring Anwar on. Anwar, I don't know where that came from. Wow. What up, Anwar?
Rachel.
Hello.
How you doing?
Thanks for being here. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing all right, and I feel like I'm still in quarantine, even though most of Arizona isn't. They've decided COVID is over.
Yeah, they gave up. Like, we're done.
Strange.
Had enough. Great. Well, thanks for being here. Thrilled that you're here. We'll talk about that in a moment. Yes, exactly. I love dropping phrases that people use. Anytime I hear the whole story in like a movie or someone's talking, I'm like, hey.
Everybody's like, let's go to Rachel so we can get the whole story.
Exactly. So, yeah, Full Circle K. Tell me about how you felt in that moment. Were you already crafting the story as it was happening? Being a comedian, being a storyteller, do you sometimes like step out of the moment and you're like, I know I'm going to tell this soon or sometime?
Well, when it happened, it was
probably my first or second year performing stand-up comedy. So I don't think I had the wherewithal to take that and make it funny. You know, your first few years of comedy, you're basically trying to be a comedian that you saw before. I was emulating other greats in that first couple of years. But I knew I was going to tell my friends that story because it was crazy enough. I'm like, you guys got to hear this story.
Yeah.
So in those moments, I definitely wasn't thinking of how this was going to sound when I told other people. I really was a little afraid the whole time. Like, I was really stuck in that moment.
Yeah, I remember when you first, at least when you first told it at the whole story, you told it on our very first show, January 2017, with the Kehinde Wiley exhibit. That was a very special show, our first one, the first sold out one. And I remember you were talking about how you weren't sure what was in his pockets, and you weren't sure if he might, that your life might be threatened, right?
Well, my biggest fear is to be stabbed.
Okay.
That
in the back or in a particular place at all?
Like, getting stabbed, period, scared Jesus out of me. Like it haunts me, the idea of somebody stabbing me. I would rather get shot, as insane as that sounds, than to see somebody come up with a knife and start stabbing me. Like the whole situation freaks me out. So
That's not a soundbite. No one chop that and use that in anything. All right. He did not mean it like how it sounds.
I'm like, maybe somebody come up with me on a gun. Like, I heard you like it. Like, no. You misheard. You misheard.
Right. I'd rather,
if you got a knife, I'd rather you shoot me. No. But yeah, so I was pretty anxious in that situation. And I think once in the story, once we did get on the highway, I did start to calm down, but I was really afraid. I was mostly afraid of losing that car. I was a service worker at the time, working security at bars, and I had like a day job that really wasn't anything. So like losing my car would be a huge blow to me because I owned it outright. I didn't have a car note on it, and I that would have been it to me. So a lot of fear of my own financial situation and fear of my own health. A lot of fear.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of where we're all are in 2022, right? Fear of our own health, fear of our own financial situation, fear of the world burning and everything just going to hell. So that's we're all feeling like how you felt on that freeway.
Yeah.
And no one to come to the rescue, right? You're just kind of going and hoping that things will be okay.
I mean, when I was hoping that the police would show up, that's something I'd never hoped for.
Right.
And then they didn't. And then I'm angry at the police. Like, why ain't y'all show up? Why ain't y'all on the highway? When I'm out here, trying to get home from a bar and I'm near the limit, y'all are everywhere. But when I actually need help, y'all not anywhere. So I was upset with the police state. And then I was upset with them again when they got there. Like, there was like a moment when they came in that I almost wanted to go, never mind, get away, But I did want the night to end, and I felt a little guilty because although I did fear that he might have a weapon, I think deep down I was like, this is really just a kid with a lot of problems right now. And turning him over to the police, it didn't feel right. So when they asked, hey, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want you to let him go, leave him alone. As long as he's leaving me alone, leave him alone. There's nothing here. The situation solved. Great police work,
Mm-hmm.
But the police are always trying to, cuff people up, beat them up, put charges on them. So I hope after that night, after I departed and he said, thank you for helping me, I hope the police really just let him about his business instead of putting him in a cage for a night and all the nonsense that comes with what is considered good police work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have a similar story that I told that same night, and same feeling. Didn't want to call the cops. When they came, it was like, oh, why did I call you? And then I hope he's okay. So, we just have to hope that we did the right thing, really for our own safety. And I didn't know if the kid had a gun either. So just hope that whatever he needed to get out of that night, that he did, and you helped him do that.
Right. and it sort of speaks to how empathetic we have to be as Black people towards other Black people. I remember Patrice O'Neal said once in an interview, he's like, we have to love our criminals. That's how racist the state of America can be, that we have to love our criminals. When we see somebody do something wrong, we gotta tell, oh, but he grew up like this and his family was like this. And, you know, if we didn't have that, you know, that boulder to carry with us all the time, that, you know, always be in a collective state, maybe we could look at somebody doing something wrong and feel completely detached from, like, oh, this person's doing something wrong. They'll deal with the justice system because it's fair, which is not, and we can move on. But that's not how it is. You know, we know the justice system is corrupt. You know, it leans a certain way. And so when we see somebody do something wrong, you're like, man, calling the police isn't worth them losing their entire livelihood over inconvenience that I'm suffering right now.
Yeah, their entire life. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked what you said about the communal state. And it is really how we think, you know. Immediately we had compassion for people who potentially, or who had put us in a dangerous situation.
Right.
And really it's the way that we think about our people, Black people. It's we recognize that there is more to them than what they're doing right now. There's more to their story. There's a whole story that we're not seeing that's happening. So yeah, that is exactly why I started this show, so that, you know, we could look at people and not just think they're a criminal, but think they're a person.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed telling this story on the whole story because I think I had told it a couple of times on other storytelling shows, but when I got to telling the whole story, I think the feeling of connectiveness between Black people, even in crazy situations like this, is what was really emphasized. And I think everybody in that audience understood that point a little bit more than, oh, this is a crazy carjacking story. The audience there and the environment that you cultivated for me to tell that story, it was rich for people to go, wow, I feel for this person who's going through things, because I understand their history as a young Black man in America. And I think that was my favorite stage telling the story, because I really got to dig it into people like that. The feelings really resonated with people a lot more than other storytelling shows.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that means a lot, especially coming from you, who you're also an event producer, doing your thing.
I'm very jealous of the shows you put on. I tell people all the time. I take groups of people there. Sometimes I show up.
I know. I'm always like, hey, yeah, exactly that. It's the nuance that our audience gets. But even people who aren't Black being there, they can kind of recognize, oh, if I was in that situation. I remember a girl I know was interviewed in the local newspaper here, and she was quoted saying, he's a big, tall Black guy, and he was scared. I don't know what I would have done. And she was like a little blonde, blue-eyed woman. And she got the nuance that for her situation, she would be scared, but for your situation, being confused with a criminal. Yeah.
I'm scared too, because I look at the threat doesn't mean I don't have normal human fears. You know, I understand that I'm at a better advantage in certain situations, but I'm just as scared. I'm running too. You know, if somebody gets fired, I'm going too.
Yeah. You just have a bigger target, so you might get shot first.
Get the big one.
Some comments that I saw during the story, someone said, Crystal said, smart move notifying the cashier. So anyone that is watching the recording, if you get carjacked, get out to pay gas and let the cashier know. Oh man, I loved when she asked, do you have ID?
She was incensed. She was disgusted with them. She was like,
was she Black too?
No, she was a small, very stout, older white woman, and
Awesome.
she really hated it. She was like, I'm gonna get the police. I feel like she thought she was in some sort of spy movie at that time. I'm like, shh, call the police. If he comes in, I'm giving her specific directions. That was probably the highlight of her night. She was like, I was in a hostage situation. It was crazy. Yeah.
And then he came and asked me for cigarettes, and I asked him for his ID.
This is my moment.
Well, so, for those of you watching, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. I'm keeping an eye. What were you gonna say, Anwar?
See, I'm surprised. I think back to that moment going into the Circle K. I'm surprised I even thought of that on the fly, because I was walking in that Circle K. I'm just like, what am I about to do? This dude's still in my car. And then I was like, okay, get her to call the police, and also have the wherewithal to make sure he doesn't know you're calling the police if he shows up. I was like really like Samuel Jackson, a negotiator. I felt really good about myself. It was a situation I would put on a resume as a special skill.
Yes. Thinking fast. Dominic commented and he said, smart move, pointing to the carjacker when cops came. Quick thinking.
I thought they were probably looking at that situation like, really? You're 6'3"? There's no, okay.
No, hit.
Listen, I got regular human fears too. All right, stop.
I am human. When you asked, did I help him? There was so much in your face, and I know you changed the way the end of the story, but in this telling, when you said, did I help him? There was that anxiety and anxiousness that I just loved. How you just ended it like that, because similarly, you don't need to explain all that comes with the situation, being a Black person and calling the cops on another Black person. Don't you say more about that?
Well, other than its face value on the racial side of things, it's really questioning your own decisions. Dealing with the uncertainty of the situation all the way up until the cops got him. You're thinking, like I said a couple of times, does he have a gun or a knife? Is this person a violent person who could potentially hurt me? And then you get to the end of that and he's like, thank you for helping me. And you're not stabbed and you're not shot. And then you question your entire evening. What if I just took him to 40th Street Baseline and he went into his house and his family welcomed him and said, where were you? Or his friend, you get those questions, and it always kind of like hits me in the heart, because I question if I would have just taken him to where he wanted to be, if his life would be different. And I don't know how his life turned out. I don't know if the cops, put a collar on him and have him in the system in some sort of way, or maybe they let him go and he got into another situation where somebody wasn't as patient as me and beat him up for trying to get in their car. So when he said, thank you for helping me, I think I was just kind of like, dang, I wish I would have just taken him to where he needed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. You took him far, but yeah. It's just the tension that we all live with the decisions that we make every day. We don't know if they're right or wrong. So, and who knows, maybe he got taken in front of a judge who had compassion and gave him community service, and he was able to turn his life around.
Hopefully, I can only hope the best. I think about him a lot, especially when I have to hear this story or retell it. I kind of think about where he is, what he's doing now. Did he get the help in a world that offers so little of it? And I'm just hopeful, because what else can you be?
Exactly. I love that. Speaking of hope, Crystal, we'll get to your question or comment in a sec. But I wanted to talk about, I hear him in the background, little Winston.
I'm really sure if he can hear him. Here,
yes.
He can get a little cameo, the little nugget.
Please introduce us to your newest edition.
This is Langston, my newborn 5-month-old son. He is
What's his full name?
Langston Patrice Young.
And if you want to learn more about Langston, listen to Anwar's podcast, Pandemic Poppy, on Thrilled to Be Here, that episode. He recommends starting there, but you can start anywhere. Thanks for bringing Langston on. Tell us how, in thinking about this situation and in your life as a whole, as a Black man, what are things that you are thinking about for Langston and as he becomes a man that you want to instill to him or impart in him?
Well, I had a very tenuous relationship with my father. We had our ups and downs. He was here and there. He was like one of those holiday dads that a lot of kids have to deal with, where they're around for birthdays and Christmas, and they get to look like the good guy, while the other parent, my mom, did all the grunt work and all the hard lifting. You know, my father got to come in on Christmas and birthdays with a new video game system and look like, you know, an all-star. So I wanted to change that, and specifically being present for the ups and downs. I feel is really important, because I know that always fosters a stronger bond with children and their parents, you know. And I feel like I'm gonna be creating most of the downs anyway. You know, my children, what are you doing here, Dad?
Well, you said he's laughing all the time, so you're doing something right.
He's in such good spirits for being sick. He's just got a great energy, and I think I remember telling my family, I really want to instill in him from a young age the importance of financial security in this country specifically, and how important it is to understand money. Because I spent a lot of my life not getting money. I still don't really get it. You know, I'm in debt in certain places, and everybody's in debt, and everybody has, you know, whatever burdens financially that they're dealing with. But I don't understand how to make money work for me, how America functions in that sense, you know. And I want him to understand money, you know, understand investments, understand safe spending, and also understand taking risks financially to get to a different place if you might, you know, want to get to that place. Just a full understanding of the financial systems in this country, I think, is important for a lot of the new generation, Black youth in particular, because we all know we're kind of, I won't say forced, but we gravitate towards industries that are very volatile, and there's no
guarantee.
You know, there's no teaching of like how to deal with being a sports star or a rapper or entertainer. It's just, you know, make a lot of money and then that's it. And then a lot of these people go broke. So even if he wanted to get into those industries, I just want him to understand, have a real good understanding of it all, because I don't. So I had to go out and get it.
Yeah, that's very wise, and it lasts. It's not just fear. I think a lot of times the way that we instill lessons into our kids is out of fear. Don't do this, don't do that. Keep your hands on the steering wheel. Right. I know that you flipped it and you just want him to succeed and be great and pass it on. It's what I'm assuming, pass it on to future generations, because that's really how white people have built wealth in this country, is generational wealth that they've come into from inheritance.
You have a giant safety net to go try and do things and not ruin your life making one risky choice, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we talked about there's no guarantee, even with investments, that you're always taking risk, but to have that safety net and still take risks, that's a luxury. That's a privilege.
A huge privilege.
Yeah. So on your latest podcast, you talked about going up to the McDonald's drive-thru. So do you typically, have you stopped going into like Circle K's to get a snack or food? Or do you just exclusively do drive-thru so you can keep your car running? But you be in your car?
I got a Circle K rewards card.
I love Circle K too. It's the cheapest gas, and my fries card will always like give me 10 cents off.
Exactly. So I'm always in a Circle K, especially because I work for UPS now, and there's a Circle K where I have to deliver. So I'm in there so often they give me like free fountain drinks. You know, the UBS
Awesome.
guys here, free fountain. I'm like, thank you. Yeah, on that episode, you're talking about the McDonald's
Yes.
where I got cursed at by a dude behind me for not pulling forward enough so he can order food.
Yes.
And I was blown away by how quickly he resorted to just cursing me out. And I thought the real cherry on top of that situation is I had just bought a new used car, and so it had the temporary plates on the back. And the evil in his heart to see that and go, that car ain't all that either. Like the insult my purchase really hard. And I think when I got to the end of that story, I was just kind of highlighting how much of a coward I can be. And I had bought that dude's breakfast as a way of going, yeah, you were mean to me and I was nice to you. But I'm sure that didn't stick.
Wow. I think you probably like planted a seed that someone else will need to water. And maybe next time he's stuck at that in-between space at a McDonald's drive-thru, he'll be like, oh, I shouldn't have yelled at that Saturn driver. I should buy the person's lunch or breakfast behind me.
They didn't pay for it. I think I was also kind of disgusted by his purchase at the McDonald's. It was 9 a.m. in the morning, and he was getting a cheeseburger. So I didn't like that at all. Get the breakfast food. What are you doing?
Hey, why are you judging him? You know, maybe this was his evening. You know, maybe he had a long shift.
Let's hope so. The way he was going off, gee.
So go listen to that episode too. So Pandemic Poppy, and then sponsored by McDonald's.
Yeah, that was called Proudly Sponsored by McDonald's.
Proudly sponsored. Yeah, there's the beginning. I was like, ooh.
Yeah,
Crystal.
That podcast, it's a lot of fun to do because I was explaining before we started the broadcast, how it's just a different format for, putting entertainment out there. And I don't always have to be, funny. And I could just kind of share stories that people could connect with. So I've been really enjoying it. It's kind of a nice little marriage of the storytelling muscle that I love to flex, and then also the stand-up comedian, being funny, being ridiculous, which I love to be on the podcast. If any of the listeners here go listen to it, just understand it's all jokes. I'm being absolutely ridiculous. So it's a lot of fun in that sense, where censorship is kind of placed in other formats. The podcast, you just kind of do whatever you want. I really love it.
Yeah, and you've got this great voice that when you like start riffing, like when you went off about your son's name, and you're just like, oh man. All right, 2 questions. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to pop them in. But Crystal asked or says, I think it's interesting the notion of our need to protect our criminals gives new meaning for us for police to intervene for the term arrest. We want the crime to be arrested if interrupted. After that, it's another situation. Yes. Yeah, Thank you for sharing, Crystal. And then Dominic said or asked, how has COVID affected you at home and being a new dad? Have you learned anything about yourself with so much change, especially not being in person doing stand-up? So you talked a little bit about that, but what about the fatherhood side of things?
I definitely feel the weight of fatherhood, but I also just feel like I'm still myself. And that's the scary feeling. I'm just like, I don't feel like I'm a dad and this weight of, oh man, I've got to provide. I feel like, what am I doing? Well, how did I get here? A lot of the time. With COVID, it's just a strain because I think people just don't understand, the how much it affected.
Yeah.
We had a hard time finding daycares, and people don't understand that. You got the people who are trying to make a point by going out without a mask, which you see all the time here in Arizona. They're trying to make a point about the government controlling and whatever that is. And it's like, that point, is it worth it to make that point when people can't go get daycare for their kids? I always get very frustrated with the people who are out there trying to make a point that they're not going to wear a mask while the rest of us have to stay inside and quarantine and do the right thing. It's like it's a battle they're fighting that's like, what are you trying to, what's the end game? You want the government to come to your house and go, you're right? Is that point worth us not being able to go watch concerts high on mushrooms? Because that's what you're ruining. That's what you're ruining. We want to go do acid and watch Donald Glover. And you're ruining that because you're trying to fight the government. Like, it's not worth it. So it's frustrating not being able, we kind of just, you know, we're with a daycare now, but it was like a whole process. And we're just, just the lack of resources because everyone's got different hours and they don't want to take new, you know, clients. That's the biggest torture right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and those early years are really important. So I'm glad you guys got into a place eventually. But, you know, as parents, you're doing great. You're doing the best you can. Your kid's healthy. He's happy. He is adorable as hell. Thank you for the cameo, Langston. Really good to meet you. Well, I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I'm going to just make a couple of announcements. I'm going to type in the chat, Pandemic Poppy. That's where all of y'all should start next if you want to get to learn more about Anwar and Langston and his new life a little bit. If you want to connect more with Anwar on Instagram and Twitter, go visit him at the Anwar Newton. I follow him on both, and it is grade A content. And if you really like what we're doing with The Whole Story, go visit us on Instagram and Facebook at The Whole Story Show, or visit our website and subscribe for updates on upcoming shows, especially for updates on what we're doing in December at thewholestoryshow.com. Anwar, what I like to do at the beginning of the show is do a little call and response. And with the one-on-one, I like to leave with that. So I'm going to say story, and you'll say
story.
Hey, see, he's a frequent flyer, so he knows how to do it. I'll say once upon a time, and you'll say time. So y'all in the chat, feel free to close it out with us. So story. Once upon a time.
Time.
Thank you all for watching. Thank you for joining us for the one-on-one with Anwar Newton. Stay tuned for upcoming events.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
Thank you.